Wonderful day and welcome. My name is Seth and we are back today without a Frontier video, but rather something out of the ordinary. Remnant from the Ashes. And I know what you're thinking now. What is going on? Why this suddenly out of nowhere weird Remnant from the Ashes video? Two reasons for that. Remnant from the Ashes 2 will come out on 25th of July of 2023, which is next month as of this video. And the second is that I just needed to get this off my chest. I'm thinking about this the last couple of days and I just need to get my head clear. This is not sponsored or anything, this is just me and the stuff on my mind for the last couple of days. But what is it? What's going on? Well, Remnant from the Ashes 2 was recently announced and it got me very excited. And I believe Remnant from the Ashes is rather an infamous game. It is on the radar of probably a bunch of people and has actually quite some community, but it is still like very not so out there, which is surprising to me. Because the game is actually a little hidden gem. And I'm typically not the guy who does like review videos or videos like this, and I had this feeling I needed to do this and get this off my chest because the history with me and Remnant from the Ashes is Remnant from the Ashes. I was one of the very few games I just rarely bought pre-ordered. I am very skeptical, especially these days, and I guess everyone else is, with how some stuff turns out, like especially from AAA companies or something, with their pre-orders and pre-deluxe collector's edition or whatever, and then the disappointment we get afterwards. You are very careful. Remnant, I don't know, something triggered inside of me. When I saw the trailers, I was like very intrigued and interested. I was like, alright, sure, I give it a shot. It wasn't too expensive, and I was like, well, here we go. I like Souls a lot. I'm a fan of the Souls series, even though I never played Elden Ring yet, which I will catch up soon, but on the bare-bones basics, Remnant from the Ashes is an RPG third-person shooter game. The thing is, Remnant takes like concepts and mechanics and ideas from other genres or games and puts them together into this like own twisty, unique experience with their own story, characters, and their own world, and everything that, right? So they did what video games usually do. Either video games innovate something new, or they taking old stuff and give it their own twist. And this is what we have here. It came out of nowhere and was actually way better than people expected, and I do agree. I did go into this game with no expectations and then actually got caught up into hundreds of hours spending in this game. And even the devs did not expect this at all. I was even one of the persons that got mentioned in one of the dev streams for people that put hundreds of hours into their games, and they recognize that. And that is another point I need to like talk about. The reason why I'm so not obsessed, but the reason why I'm so happy about Remnant from the Ashes 2 coming out is that my experience with Remnant from the Ashes 1 was broadly very positive because of the developers itself. So I spent an unhealthy amount of hours, of course, as anyone will do who enjoys a game. When the game came out, I spent probably like a few months, like 3 to 5 months or something, on bass just playing this game. And something a lot of people may be unaware is that now my channel, because they're probably don't interested in that content, but if you scroll down to my very first video I ever uploaded on YouTube, that is Remnant from the Ashes 0-hit all bosses from the base game, like 2-3 years ago, I think. On top of that, I did like this impossible or quote-unquote impossible community challenges. There was like this dev stream where the community came up with like fun challenges and like said, oh yeah, no, these are like impossible challenges to do. And well, how addicted I was to the game, I was like, I proved them wrong. And yes, I did all of the community challenges with some extra stuff. And do I regret it? Definitely not. That's my history with the game. So what's the history of the game? Well, Remnant from the Ashes isn't the first game of the series, story-wise at least. we have 3 games to the game. So if you are actually interested in the full story of the game, before Remnant from the Ashes 2 comes out, Chronos from the Ashes is the prequel to the story of Remnant from the Ashes, and Remnant 2 will be the sequel to Remnant 1. So you most likely want to dive into Chronos first. The thing is, Chronos is not exactly the same. Chronos from the Ashes is not a shooter game. It is a 2016 Oculus Rift game, which they then later 2020 ported to PC, so you can actually play the game and enjoy it and the story and what the game was back then. And it has no guns involved. It is pure RPG. Go in, go to the dungeon, kill mobs, explore, finish. Story, done. It is not that long of a game. Obviously, it was a VR game, so you will see the limitations and the design choices that changed. But then we had Remnant from the Ashes coming out afterwards, and that changed the gameplay around. Now we have guns. There's still melee in the game present, and even if you determined enough can do melee builds and melee runs only, with a little bit of tricky exceptions. But base of the core is it is a third-person shooter at its core. And how it works is that you have this like main story going on, which is very interesting story actually. It's not like the greatest story of all time. The game is far from like the perfect game of all time or something, but it is an interesting story if you can get invested into it. And I definitely want to see what's going on with the story in Remnant 2, because I did play Chronos from the Ashes on stream a while ago and Remnant from the Ashes 2. So when the second installment comes out next month, I definitely will be interested in see where the story is going. But the story is not like the main selling point of the game. That is the gunplay. And I must say, the gunplay in this game, like the mechanic-wise, is actually way smoother than I expected from a no-name, refurbished, like, IP series. Like, the studio behind, the developers behind the game are actually no names. They are gunfighter games, which are probably known from the Darksiders series, working on those. So they actually have some experience, of course, but coming out of nowhere with this new game, third person, there you have it. And having nailed down the smoothness of the gameplay in this regards was actually very surprising, and I can respect that, taking the time to getting this polished out. So the actual gameplay is running around, following the story in this procedural generated levels. You can kind of imagine it's like Warframe, where you go like into this level and then you have this fixed tile sets which are like shovel around and have always like a little bit of different aspects to them. That is kind of like the same here in Remnant. You have like this procedural generated levels when you come in, and it is fixed tile sets. So if you know the tile set, you know what is coming to you, but there is like here and there some variations with like new loot, new events, enemies and bosses or something you can find. And so there is some replayability where you can discover new things on multiple playthroughs. And the game is focused on multiple playthroughs itself, actually, based on, so they want you to do multiple playthroughs for the full experience of content and loot. Story-wise, you don't need to do multiple playthroughs, and this replayability option is rather for people who actually played through the game, enjoyed it, and want more. This is where the replayability comes in. But if this is not your thing, then you probably just will be happy with one playthrough, but you will miss out on some design choices here in terms of replayability, which makes the game maybe shorter for you, but still an experience. So inside of these levels, where you have multiple levels, you go through a variety of little areas where you have then a mini boss in the first half of the level. We have like this mini boss battles or this bigger boss battles where you need to like dodge, learn the patterns, and then destroy the bosses. And you have stamina. So you need to, for dodging, like dodge rolling and running, sprinting, so you need to stamina management, kind of like a Souls game, right? And I think this is the biggest point where people say, oh yeah, this is Dark Souls. Big boss battles with patterns you need to like die to and relearn and then etc. You get the point, right? It is equipment-based gameplay, so your equipment is the most important factor here, but the game mechanics also interact with that on top of it. Like you have certain level scaling in the areas. You have areas or bosses with like fixed levels or like a minimum like level, like gear level, I would say. And it's not always super dandy-wandy, and something you need to like invest a little bit and to understand it, but it is not that bad. It is just a bit, yeah, tricky if you, for example, want to get a new weapon and you want to test this new weapon. Well, you obviously want to use this weapon, but if you're in a high level area already and your weapon is low level, it won't do much damage, obviously. So what do you do? Yeah, go upgrading. So you need to upgrade the weapon to do substantial damage to the area where you're in right now. If not, then you need to go back and grind. It's not the thing for everyone, so you need to keep that in mind if you just want to switch on the fly to new equipment to try out or use. You need to invest grinding into it, and it's not the most friendly for people who play this game like a one playthrough true, and they don't have the option to just on the fly switch to the new gear. They just acquire it from this boss battle and try it out on the content they're in right now. That is definitely one of the weak points of the game, and there's some other weak points too. So another weak point, or actually two weak points I need to point out here is, first, the game tries with its like little variations in tile sets, try to encourage you to explore, obviously. The exploration itself, though, is pretty bare bones. You have very linear levels. Like if you maybe remember something like Final Fantasy 13, right, where it was very linear. You go from point A to point B and that's it. It's not as bad as 13, but it is very linear itself. And then you have like in this tile sets, occasionally you can go into this building to right, explore around the alley, etc., which do invite you to explore, and I'm very excited about stuff like that. Like, oh yeah, I want to explore there. The point of exploring, though, is not as good. You have accessoires and items you can find. You have even like little side areas which are going into like a dead end, but they're like special events or areas that spawn there, so you can get like some unique stuff there too if you go out your way and try to explore there and deriving from the main path a bit. The only loot from explore, the only like exploring reward you get is either a chest or items and accessoires. This can be like quest items, this can be like upgrade items, or just straight up chests. And that's it. And obviously, because this is a procedural generated game with fixed tile sets, after you played a little bit the game, you know where the spawn points are for these items or chests. So if you run multiple times through the game, then you don't really explore any, or you don't have a reason to explore anymore because you know where the spawn points is. You straight up run to these spawn points if you know the tile set, like, oh yeah, it's there, it's there. You check these because this is RNG, obviously, it's procedural generated, and you're like checking this, and then you move on. You don't need to like go out of your way anymore to explore it all because, yeah, it is a technical difficulty, obviously, because it's not easy to just have content like on the fly procedural generate without like getting stuck in a wall or something if you don't have stuff like big spawn points. That is a technical challenge, and I can understand that. But the problem is that the loot is outside of accessoires, quest item, very boring. The chests are always like some consumable items, money, or upgrade items. So stuff you technically get everywhere else. The chests are just like a chunk of it. Like you get like, oh yeah, you gone like this staircase upwards and 2 floors to the left. Here you have a chest with some loot. The problem here is it's also random loot. So sometimes you run up there and then you have a chest with nothing in it, or with very bare minimum. So it wasn't even worth it because the same amount or more you can get just by running normally through the level and just killing mobs that way and picking up whatever you find. It's one of the weak points. I don't like about the game, and I hope Remnant 2 will encourage you a little bit more to explore the world, but it could be also just a design choice by the developers. I can't tell you that exactly. I just hope we have a little bit more reason to explore, because I'm a sucker for exploration. It is just fun if you have replayability, and then instead of just mindlessly running down this corridor from A to B to check on certain spawn points, instead just, oh yeah, maybe there's like a rare enemy behind this, or maybe there's like some rare loot behind this, or maybe there in this other alley there's like maybe a new secret hidden wall spawning where you have like more stuff to explore, maybe a little bit of flavor text lore or something. Why not? It keeps me engaged in exploring these tile sets more than just 1 to 2 times after I memorize the tile sets. And one of the features I really hope is a little bit more emphasized in the second game. If not, it's what it is, because the rest of the game is still also pretty nice. The gunplay is a very strong point, very smooth. Animations are very like good, well done, except like facial animations. They're like, it's probably like a lower budget. It was probably like a lower budget game for Gunfire's game, and they probably didn't have the capabilities of like some high fidelity motion capture or something, and we're probably limited to more rudimentary facial animation, and understandable. We will see how it like turns out to the second game, because Remnant, from what I understand, did sell really well actually, and the reason why we probably get another one. But let's talk about the second weak point I mentioned before, because from there we go into a stronger point, which is very important here. The second weak point I want to talk about is boss battles. But this weak point turns actually into a strong point in DLCs. And what I mean is, the boss battles itself in the game to 90% of the base game are pretty, yeah, the designs are cool, the ideas are cool, and I like that the bosses have like unique features and all their like little gimmicks or unique propositions in the fights. And you just go through these fights and like, oh wow, yeah, cool, the first time you go through them. But then you realize a lot of these boss battles have ad fights, and you know how I stay to ad fights. I hate them. I do understand why they have it in this game, and surprisingly it is not for artificially difficult increase, which is a very good thing. This was rated a design choice from the developers, because they were like, yo, we have resource management, we have guns have ammo, so you need to resource management this ammo. So what do you do when you run out of ammo inside of the boss fight? And then, yeah, the problem here is that I think the developers didn't trust the community, or like, obviously if you try to make a game that should appeal a wide range of people, like a big audience, you want to make it as convenient as possible. But on the other hand, I think they didn't trust the people too much here. We're worried about that the people don't have too much individual initiative to actually use the consumables that the game gives you, because if it is one thing, then you won't lack resources if you take your time to dive into, well, the consumables. Something we have, for example, ammo boxes. Ammo boxes cost some money at the shop and the base, and they refill your entire stock of ammo. And usually you can get away with like a normal, like casual playthrough. You can get away on any boss fight with like, depending on your skill level and like how much you hit your shots, which spots you hit on the monsters, because there's weak spots, etc. So you do more damage if you hit weak spots, and etc, right? Everyone will have a different amount of like ammo consumption, especially if you have something like a shotgun, which has very limited ammo but hits really hard with each shot if you land them. In a casual playthrough just going through the bosses, you will most likely not need more than 2 to 3 ammo boxes per fight, because you have your main weapon and your side weapon usually, and the combined damage of these is usually more than enough to mow down these bosses in a good amount of time without wasting too much. So the ads here in these boss fights are mainly there to give you ammo back. This is their purpose, their entire purpose. They're not there to artificially increase difficulty, and I'm 100% glad for that. and they're mainly just to resource management the bosses, which on the other hand hurts these boss fights actually because, yeah, it makes them pretty shory and annoying. Because I just want to fight the boss and not like fight for the 5th time in 10 minutes an ad wave coming at me for ammo I don't need because I'm full still on my ammo the entire time. But I'm wasting ammo for the ads first, and then I'm getting some of these ammo back for the boss, which just summons another wave of ads like 2 minutes later. So my problem is that ad fights, they tried to do it for the good reasons here, and they didn't done it in like the bad reasons, and I can understand this, but I feel like they should have like showed or emphasized more the use of ammo boxes and encouraged the player to interact with the consumables of the game a bit more and like the shops and the currencies, etc. Instead of just trying to fill up this like or this gameplay hole of resource management, the boss fights with ad spawns, because they don't need ad spawns, and that is proven in the DLC. And here we come to the good point, because this boss point I had turns into the good point on top of it, because this game had DLCs, and the DLC had new content, obviously, new areas, new bosses. Corso's DLC was not really a content mod. It had obviously content, and but the focus here was a new game mode and just an extension and improvement of a previous area that was in the base game already. But the other DLC, the second DLC, is actually a big content extension with new areas and new enemies, new bosses, new everything, right? And they showed that they took player feedback and improved on the boss fights massively, the DLCs. The DLCs, especially the subject DLC, is very good and very fun to play. But it's very fun to go into these because the boss fights don't rely on ads in these fights anymore, which is really good. The base game, for example, did had like an attempt on a more fixed way of ads with the Undying King fight, but it got pretty annoying because, yeah, Undying King was weirdly balanced. He had like very, like, not so much cooldowns between his attacks, so if you took more time killing like the 2 crystals he spawns because of positioning, he summoned then like these soldier dudes around, and if you're unlucky, he summons more of them. And then he summoned more crystals, and while you're trying to manage the soldiers underground, the crystals shoot at you, doing massive damage, even with like good defense against like range, etc. Doing the crystals doing massive damage, this doing massive damage from the soldiers depending on your level, etc. And it got really frustrating and tricky, and just showed that, yeah, ads just are boring. But I did like the idea that Undying King tried to have like a pattern here and just like a fixed way of doing it, and I liked the Undying King fight from an ad aspect more of any of the other ad fights or bosses with ads, but it still was pretty rough. On the DLCs though, they improved vastly on these mechanics, and the bosses don't rely that much on ads anymore, which is a very huge good point. It shows that the developers actually care, because the developers of this game, the Gunfire games, interacted since the release and the entire time, even to this date, with the community. They are very passionate about community feedback. And that is a really good point, and one point why I respect these indie studios so much right now. The community feedback and communication here. There's very few developers these days who take feedback very seriously or do actually care about their product when it's out. Gunfire games, on the entire time since their release, they took the feedback and tried to integrate as much and I won't say complaints, but like as much feedback and suggestions and what wasn't vibing with people when they released it, and try to adjust it, change it, improve it. And that is a really good point why I think Remnant 2 will be, as safe to say, if you're thinking about if Remnant will be a good game or not, Remnant 2, it will be. I can tell you right off the bat, it will be. I was going blind into Remnant 1, in purchasing it and was going with no expectations in it. I was surprised. Seeing how they worked out and communicated with the community on the way, I can safe to assume here Remnant 2 will be phenomenal. What I saw in the trailer is crazy and I can't wait. It's looking really damn good. And I do need to shout out the developers of this game. Gunfire Games is doing a really good job sharing their passion project while trying to please as many people as possible if they have an issue with the game. And that just shows how much they care, and I love that. That is what we need more. And one reason why I just wanted to get this off, because I feel like a lot of people heard about the game. Friends told them about it. They never got into it. They were like, oh yeah, I heard about this game, but well, I didn't get into it, or I wasn't really sure if I should get into it. The game is definitely worth trying out. It is not a pure single player game. You can play it co-op. It's cross-play and cross-platform too. You can even share a certain amount of DLC content with others. And it's very phenomenal. And again, the DLCs add a lot to the game. So if you're not a really big fan of the base game, try out the DLCs. For one, we have, for example, the Corsos DLC, which is bringing new game mode into it. And one of the best boss fights in the game, the Queen. That boss fight is probably the best designed boss fight in the entire game. It has everything. If any boss in the game was close to a Dark Souls boss experience, the Queen is it. You need to try her. She's so fun to learn and so fun to master, and then when you got her, it's satisfying. So hard. And whoever designed that Gunfire, that boss fight, props to you. I love you. I will give you my firstborn child if I called. Thank you. But then the Corsos DLC adds a new game mode which is completely different. And it is a roguelike mode. Yes, this game has a roguelike mode. It is exactly what it is. You go into this mode from the DLC and you can play a roguelike version inside of the game. So it uses the assets, etc. and turns it into a roguelike. You start with naked, pretty much. Get a random set of items you can buy, etc. Go into this run, and then Risk of Rain style. You have like the timer going up, and then when the timer goes up to a certain amount, the enemies get stronger. You run around these areas, loot, get stronger too, random loot, random trades, etc. Getting stronger, do a boss, come back, have new shop rotations, and then going on until you inevitably die at some point. And then you rinse and repeat, just like a roguelike. It is a fantastic mode. It works actually really well. If you just come from the base game and like playing the game, like, and then going to this DLC, it's probably not that like different, right? And then see this roguelike mode, you're like, wait, what? And then you're thinking, wait, how does this even work? But it works. It is fantastic how easy it actually integrates in the game and actually is a completely different experience. Like, you can play this game just for the roguelike mode if you want. It has nearly all the content from story and whatever, just in a different format. And it's fantastic. And it's, in multiplayer, even a better experience. And this comes from me, who is mainly a single player dude. I play single player a lot. And Remnant was a really fun experience, multiplayer. It's really well in multiplayer. And then you have the second DLC, of course, Subject, which extends the story, ends the story from Remnant 1, like concludes it a bit more. And extends the areas with more lore, with new areas, new enemies, and new mechanics, and it's fantastic. And that's basically what I wanted to transmit in this video to you. If you didn't catch up or like didn't have the like initiative to go, hey, I want to play Remnant, but I'm not sure about it. I want to buy, hey, yo, my friend told me about it, or I see this, do it. Just do it. If you want the gameplay experience, you don't even need to play Remnant 1. You can wait for Remnant 2, because I'm pretty sure Remnant 2 is an improvement over 1 with new stuff. So you can wait for Remnant 2 coming out next month, but if you want a first-hand experience and see like the changes and improvements and see how smooth the gameplay already is in terms of gunplay in Remnant 1, then you should definitely play it. I'm not sure if it's still a thing. I think there was a Humble Bumble going on. It could be like already over. Don't quote me on this here right now. I'm not sure when this video is gonna go out. But there was a Humble Bumble for like a game of choice was like 12 bucks for Remnant. Perfect deal. Best deal you could ever do on this game. If not, I'm sorry you missed it, but the game is still worth for its money, so I can tell you, definitely a buy you won't regret if you're kind of into these genres and interested in the game. And even if you don't like the game, just for the fact that you can support these developers is for me reason enough. Because there's a lot of developers where I say, well, they don't deserve the money they're charging for this. I can like refund and regret buying this game 100% without any guilt. But if I didn't like Remnant from the Ashes, I will not refund it just for the fact that I want to support the developers and see where they're going. They're so passionate and communicative with the community about it. It's fantastic and refreshing to see in this time and age, especially. For example, you can see how passionate they are. Tragic from Gunfire Games is pretty much a Tom Holland of Gunfire Games. He, like every time there was like new rumors or new updates coming about, he needed to contain himself to not throw a Tom Holland on every single sentence he was so excited about typing a Discord community, for example. And it's fantastic seeing like how excited the developers get about their own project and games, because this is something not like self-explanatory these days, especially not with this level of communication and passion put into these. There's a lot of like developers who put their product out, and then either because of the publisher or because they're working already on new projects, they just don't care. They just put it out, and as long there's no fatal errors preventing the people from buying it, so they can't like say, oh, failed advertisement or something, even if it has like 100 million bucks, performance issues or whatsoever, as long as there's no fatal error, they say, well, have it, take it or leave it, and they move on to the next game, because they still sell for publisher reasons, for IP reasons, whatsoever. It is sad, because there's a lot of games out there who deserve more love and passion like Gunfire Games does to their games, and makes me sad. But that is like a complete different topic I could talk about all day, like the modern game developing issues. But I just wanted to get this video out and talk about how much more attention this game deserves alone for the investment of the developers into their projects and the game. So yeah, even if this video doesn't get like any big attention or recognition from the developers or bigger YouTubers or public figures like Hairline Gold 64, etc., doesn't reach 100 people or anything, as long as I could help at least one of you, I hope you have a great time with the game. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Even if you don't, I'm sorry. Remnant 2 is coming out. I want to get it onto more people's like radar, because it is really a fantastic game coming. If you're interested in the gameplay, wait for maybe just 2, check out 1. If you want the full story, check out Chronos, Remnant, and go your journey with 2 next month, because I definitely will. I won't be able to play it on release, sadly, because I don't have money for it. Unfortunately, I will get around it eventually at some point, getting my hands on a copy and then play it. But I hope you all enjoy the journey when you start, and I will see you all later when it's time for me to. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a fantastic day, and my name is Saf, and I'm out. See you in the next, probably regular video for Frontier. So, good night, and bye-bye.